Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the lay of the land as Rishi Sunak gets ready for his first, and probably last, Conservative Party conference as leader and Prime Minister. He's tried to claim that his, say, net zero moves last week are going to be popular, and, he may indeed convince a highly partisan crowd of Tory party members of that, but the polling landscape as he goes into that conference is really not going to help him. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Rishi Sunak has been carrying out some local radio interviews today. I'd have thought he would run a mile after the arse that Liz Truss made of them last year. And indeed, the reporting on this has not exactly been positive for Sunak. On HS2, for example, he's been hammered. He was unable to state what the government's policy is multiple times. Like, oppositions can sometimes get away with being a bit vague about some policies because, after all, the situation may change by the time they're in government. It's all right saying, well, we would do this now, but if we're not in government for another year, we may have to amend it. Sunak is in government now and has been for years. That he cannot say what his own policy is on a project which has been running slightly longer than the Conservatives have been in office is a spectacular own goal. Can only imagine how the vaguely intelligent Tory MPs in the north of England reacted to these evasions. He's heading into a vital party conference. He's going to have his messages amplified more than usual in the news. He needs to make sure that those messages are clear, or at least that they sound clear. This was not a good start. When pressed for an answer, Sunak said he won't speculate on future things. Future things? HS2 is a project that's been running for over a decade, including several years whilst he was holding the purse strings. And he is the Prime Minister today. It was a ridiculous response. And I cannot imagine that the listeners of that Yorkshire radio station in particular will have been impressed at all with it. But HS2 is only part of the policy jigsaw. Last week, what he did want to talk about was net zero. Threw that into the mix as well. And after Sunak's little speech on net zero on the U-turns last week, there was a battle for the narrative. Now, there are polls showing that some broadly approve of some of the moves, although, as I said at the time, doesn't help the Conservatives if those who approve are those who are going to vote Conservative anyway. With Labour's commanding consistent lead in the polls, Sunak's Tories need to be targeting swing voters in key constituencies, and there is no evidence of them doing so. There were two polls where the fieldwork took place after Sunak's speech last Wednesday, showing that his personal approval rating had gone down. Now, that was an indication that the policy changes had lost support rather than gained it. But then at the weekend, we had a bit of a googly from YouGov, or if you prefer the American vernacular, curveball. And this is one of the good pollsters, right? They published a poll which gave the Conservatives a 3-point boost and Labour a 2-point drop in the polls compared to the previous week. That is a 5-point closing of the polls, from a 21-point lead for Labour to just 16 points. More than enough still, yes, for Labour to win a majority in a general election, but a hell of a shift over the course of 1 week from a pollster not known for their huge swings over the course of such a short period of time. And yes, okay, there were swings like that when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, but there were very good reasons for that. People asked me about it. I had to confess, it was concerning. Of course it was. But it wasn't consistent with the other polls. Not that all polls are equally valid, but what caused it? Was the net zero nonsense gaining traction after the media were reporting on it more? Was it more to do with Labour not getting their own messages out effectively? Was it something else? And then today, YouGov have published the results of another updated poll, albeit they haven't published the detailed tables at the point at which I'm recording it, but they've published the raw results. Now, Labour have gained those 2 points back, and the Conservatives have lost their 3-point boost. For good measure, the Lib Dems have gained a point, but that's not unusual when their party conference is on. Basically, whenever the media are sort of forced to report on the Lib Dems, they tend to do a little bit better. And then, when the media ignores them, it sort of drops back down again. But what it means is the polls have now returned to exactly where they were As far as Labour and the Tories are concerned, 2 weeks ago, it was like, net zero announcement. A few days later, oh, little boost. Oh, that's nice. And then a week later, oh no, I've thought about it now. No, back down you go. Now, I confess to having no real idea as to what the reason will be for this swing one way and then immediately back the other. Someone suggested it's because the general policy sounded good to the public to begin with, then with a bit more thought afterwards, perhaps not so good. I don't know. What I do know is that a day ago, Sunak might have been able to use that YouGov poll from the weekend to show his party that he was at last making progress. Remember, Sunak's attempting another reset. I think it's his fourth. He's claiming that he was just putting out fires until now, but now we're going to see the real Rishi. That's his phrase. That's their phrase. The real Rishi. That's it. Not in action, man, as Starmer's labelled him. And he could have claimed that this poll was just the start for the real Rishi and that he was going to take the fight to Labour. Might have worked as well. Might have worked. How could you not? If you're a Conservative Party member and you're desperately looking for a way for the Conservatives to win the next election, how would you not be impressed with a poll that's been static for so long? Then suddenly a 5-point narrowing there. But this correction means that Sunak now has nothing to go to the conference with to show any progress for his 11 months in charge of the party and the government. If major policy changes can elicit temporary swings in the polls, maybe Sunak would have done better to have made the announcement this week rather than last. Mind you, the timing of the announcement was caused by a leak anyway. He'd intended to make the announcement last Friday, but was forced to bring it forward to last Wednesday after the media got wind of it. And if Sunak is unable to prevent leaks of major announcements, then I guess he can't time anything to get a tactical boost in the polls at just the right time. But if major policy announcements such as his changes on the net zero platform are only going to buy him a few days of poll bounce before it crashes back down to earth, then he presumably needs another one very quickly. Ahead of his keynote speech to close the conference next Wednesday. What's he going to say about the progress the party's making under his leadership? Keir Starmer will give a speech at the Labour Party conference. He'll be talking about the progress they've been making. What's Sunak going to say? He could point out that Labour had a 33-point lead at the last Tory party conference, but it's now just 21 points. Yeah, okay, but it was also 21 points at the start of 2023. It's been like that all year. He's announced that he's going to stop the boats, but he hasn't. He announced that NHS waiting lists will come down. They've gone up. He announced that borrowing will come down. It's gone up, and now the cost of borrowing is expected to be higher than normal. He promised to halve inflation, which is the only one which is sort of happening. Not that anyone's impressed, because the cost of living continues to get worse. He promised to grow the economy. To the nearest percent, UK GDP is expected to grow by 0% this year. He has since grown bored with his New Year pledges and moved on to other things like net zero U-turns, the most recently, but also swapping school buildings for sheds. An Indian trade deal where workers' rights and environmental standards are going to be dropped, although Tory party members may not mind that one. What gets me is how Sunak has spent all year pandering to the extremists in his party. Oh, woke this and culture war that. And these people still attack him for his weakness. They attack him for his weakness. And he's getting nowhere in the polls. And I've said plenty of times, he's clearly a political novice, but he's not a stupid man. At no point did he not think, just sod it. I keep paying attention to these people and they keep beating me up anyway. I'm just going to ignore those in the party who are attacking me no matter what I do. And I'm actually going to listen to some strategists for a change. Why didn't he just do that? Maybe it's too late now. Stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Oh, and just to finish off, that 21-point lead, which YouGov reckon Labour have regained again. Yeah, so there's if you look at the details of the 18 to 24-year-old group, it's a 68-point lead for Labour. 68-point lead. Oh, and by pure coincidence, the Conservatives are not at all happy at 16 and 17-year-olds getting the vote after the next election. But do make sure that young people in your life are registered to vote for the next election. You never know when it might be. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.